Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dottie. If you're new here, thank you so much for coming on here. And if you're not, welcome back. Welcome to a new series called Things I Wish I Knew About Marriage. And essentially, I'm bringing together some of my amazing aunties to come and talk about their experiences, their journey to marriage, things they wish they knew beforehand, things they wish people told them about marriage, their expectations versus reality. So yes, stay tuned, make sure you like, share, comment, and yes, I hope you enjoy. Hi guys, my name's Dottie. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for coming on here. Today I have two very special guests. I have two very dear aunties to me that I'd like to introduce themselves today. So when you're ready, auntie.
My name is Dolapo. I've been married for 10 years. I'm a mom of 2 and I'm a property investor.
So my name is Adeola. I'm a social worker. I manage a service. I'm a social work manager for a service in Haringey. I've been married for 22 years and I have 3 children.
I would describe my marriage in 3 words, saying loving, caring, and dependable.
In 3 words, the first thing is blessed. My marriage is blessed. It's blessed. The other word I'll use is my home. My marriage is fun. There is laughter every single day. We call my husband the clown of the house. And the third thing I'll say is loving. My marriage is characterized by love.
I would say the one quality I really appreciate about my husband is that he's consistent. So from the point where I met him until now, whatever he says he's going to do, he does, and he's always consistent.
My husband is caring. He's the most caring man I have ever seen. The thing is, even when I pretend to have a headache, he's sincerely caring for me. So he is caring, and I think that's one quality that is known with him by everyone.
I guess this was just a really important topic because I guess we're all at this stage where that's becoming a big topic of discussion, big decisions are being made. And I've seen stories and I've heard stories, I've seen things go wrong, and I just wonder what could have been done sort of to prevent that or to help marriages be sustained in a much better way. And so I thought, why not speak to people that have been in marriages that have gone through that journey, to share the things that they wish somebody told them before they got married, to encourage us young people as we venture into that journey. So yeah, I think you mentioned briefly how long you've been married for. If you just want to share a bit of your love story. Yes.
I'll let Dolapo go first. Do you want me to go first?
Okay, I can go first.
All right then.
That's really impressive. How long did you say you've been married?
22 years.
22 years, wow. So this is my 10th year anniversary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we're really excited.
Congratulations.
Yes, Venice, we're going back to where we went to for our first. We always said it that,
Oh.
you know, if we made it to, which we knew we were going to make it to 10th, obviously, but thank God we said we'll go back to the same place we went to for our first year anniversary.
Brilliant.
So it was really
That's
special.
so beautiful.
So, but I must say it's been a great journey so far. And I will say that my story is not the typical story because I had this dream in my mind from when I was young. I wanted to get married when I was really young because my mom got married young and she had a great marriage. So I thought the key to getting married was to get married early to the right person, the perfect person. And I had this, what I now call the idol of my heart.
Wow.
And I think it was an amalgamation of all the people I'd met that I liked and picking different things from them and trying to create this sort of perfect man. But it wasn't at all, you know, what God had for me. So I think I went through life with that expectation and just knock back. And by the time I got to 38, so you can imagine, from 18 when I started praying for a husband to 30, I met my husband when I was about 35. And at the time, he didn't quite fit the mold of what I had because I told you I had this idol in my heart. And he was a bit, now I know him, he's different. But at the time, I thought he was a bit too shy. He was a bit too quiet. He wasn't that sort of, you know,
that guy,
bubbling guy, you know. And that's kind of what I used to be drawn to. And I remember my mom looked at me once and was like, you know, you need to, it's almost like, you know, you need moms in your life sometimes to just snap you in thinking the right way, because she was like, you need to think about the qualities that you want in someone, as opposed to this sort of fairy tale boyfriend type of thing. You need to think about who's going to get you through the tough times of marriage. And I will say that the Holy Spirit played a really strong role in helping me to sort of start to see my husband differently. And one of the things I would say is that, honestly, we have our husbands around us for, a lot of times, but we will be sort of ignoring them or not taking them seriously because they don't fit what we have, our preconceived ideas of what a husband or what the guy we think we should marry is.
Wow.
Anyway, so long story short is, at some point we started dating, we started talking, and then we had one conversation in which I just saw him in a different light. And I was like, this guy is really amazing. He has so many of the qualities I've always wanted, but something was blinding me to seeing that. And then eventually we got into the relationship, and we then started to get to know each other. And then by the time we got married, I then had a clear idea as to, okay, this is who God has for me. And that's why I said it's not a typical story, in that it wasn't like butterflies or anything like that. I went into marriage with my eyes open. I knew who I was getting married to, and and it's been an amazing journey since.
Doctor, do you really want my story? Because you're in my story, right? You are in my story.
Am I?
Right, okay. He was my boss.
Wow.
My husband. So my husband was my boss at work, and asked me to work McDonald's. Like, he was a shift manager, and I was this JJC who was taking forever to learn how to use the till. So he was my boss. There was nothing to it. And how did I actually meet him was my uncle, who he came back to. He called him to get us a job. And the day my husband met me, and I know we're recording, but I'll say this, and I'm saying this for a reason, and just to back what you're saying about your idea of the man you want. Sometimes don't let your husband walk past you because you're looking for that fairy tale, story or man. I was just wearing a t-shirt, no bra, no nothing. I shaved my hair coming back as low as you can imagine. Wow. So just a small conca. And my uncle was like, Dolapo, go and get the door. And I opened the door, and it was him. And he says that the day he saw me like that, he knew that was his wife. But I was like, oh, hello, sir. Hello, sir. How are you? My uncle is upstairs. So he got us a job, and he was my manager. And just things just happened from there, and that's really how we met.
So now you're in the relationship, you're about to get married. What were you expecting marriage to be like? What were you hoping for marriage to be like?
My mom and dad's relationship to me was the best thing. I wouldn't say I didn't know that they could have been arguing, because when I see my mom in the room and my dad in the sitting room, I knew that maybe they're not talking, but it's just for half an hour or 20 minutes. But I really did not know what happened, and I didn't care to know. So I wanted that type of relation, because that's all I knew. That's the honest truth. I don't know. I think I was looking for a man that was older than me by 11 years. Yeah, specifically because that was what, it's strange, but that was what was between my dad and my mom. And then I was looking for my father as an husband, or as a husband. And I think that's because the platform or the template I have for a husband is my dad. So I was looking for my dad. And to be honest, we'll come back to other things. I did get my dad, because my husband is everything like my dad that I saw then. I didn't think I needed to work, or even if I needed to work, not because I needed the money. My idea of a husband, I'm quite traditional in that, cultural, is I'm your wife, he's my head, and he should take care of me, all my needs, meet my needs, care for me and teach me. So, and that's what I got. Some things I got, I don't know if we'll have more discussions, but my expectations, some were met. I'll leave it there for now.
Okay. How about you, Auntie?
So it's difficult. It's a difficult question, because you see, by the time I got married, I'd seen a lot of my friends and their expectations being completely dashed in marriage. So by the time I got into marriage, because as I mentioned, it took a while. I think I got married when I was 38. And so I didn't have that much. I was just grateful that God had actually given me who I thought was my husband, right? Because at this point, I'd been through, I will say one thing, I had a big expectation before I got married that the man I married had to be this super spiritual person. He had to be like a pastor. He would be the leader of the home spiritually.
Opposite for me.
Really? Because that's what my dad was. My dad was very much the
Opposite.
spiritual leader in our home. And funny you say that. My dad was 2 years older than my mom. And I'd always been like, I can never marry somebody much older because I thought that was the perfect, you're like compadre, like you're together, and they were very much like that. So my expectation going into marriage was very much, I wanted him to be this spiritual juggernaut, and my husband, he is spiritual, but he's not that. Do you understand? And I know that was one of my struggles because I'd always wanted, but let me tell you how God really helped me to change that. Just before I met my husband, I met someone in church and we were both in the same department. We had such a calling for kids, and honestly, we had so many things in common spiritually and in different ways, but we couldn't resolve conflicts. I'm quite I can be quite calm, mild-mannered, but with him, I would get very fiery and very upset. And I know some people will say that's passion, and passion is great, but it needs to be something that can be controlled because in marriage, you need to be able to resolve conflicts. It's like the biggest thing you're going to be dealing with is difference of opinion, which school should we send the kids to? And I remember somebody told me, if you can't have simple conversations before you get married and resolve them, how are you going to get through marriage when you now have real tough things like mortgages to pay, where to live, your child is acting up, how to discipline? How are you going to have those conversations? So that relationship was so tumultuous that by the time I got out of it, my friend who knew what my ex was saying, you see, this is what I'm telling you. I'm not saying that don't marry a Christian guy or a spiritual guy, but it doesn't have to be. So when I met my husband, I know that was one of the things, but the one thing about him was that he was very disciplined. He's a Christian guy, but he's not the guy that wants to be out there preaching or, he's not that guy. And, he's obviously still developing his spiritual walk, but he's a great husband. As long as he does have a heart for God and he does listen to what God says in terms of where you are concerned and where the family is concerned, and those are the more fundamental things, not the fluff of, he can get up and preach or he can get up and sing. Those things that, they're not what's going to sustain your marriage.
Yeah, that's so good. So from the both of you, what I'm getting is, despite your initial, well, not so much Adeola, but maybe Dolapo, despite your initial expectations not being met, you still got what you needed.
Yeah, definitely.
In terms of
definitely,
yeah, that's really
definitely. And I think there's a reason for that. I say that now. I say it now because of my understanding spiritually as a Christian and, as a woman of faith, is that I say this every time. And this is, if you have at some point in your life, there is a point in your life where you have sincerely committed, you took your life and said, God, take. You said, God, this is my life, take it. You can't jump hoops and decide to drink brandy or whatever. If God's design for your life is never to drink brandy, it won't go through your throat. Because there is a point in your life when you've sincere, there's something, there is, I'm looking for that word, it's not a bond, like a covenant with God, that's it, where you said, Father, take it, it's all yours. So no matter what happens to you, He's in the know of it. So no matter how much you think this is your doing, or I've married the wrong man, or I sat on the wrong chair, no. He did it because you gave it to Him to do.
I love that. Okay, so now I want us to get into the shocks and surprises that came with marriage. So things that you weren't necessarily expecting.
I had a thought about that when I was coming. I know the biggest shock I will say is childbirth.
I think that's a natural big shock for us women.
No, because like when we got married, I always was fearful of not fearful, but wary of the first year, because they always said the first year was going to be the most challenging year. That's when you're still trying to get to know each other, and even if you come from similar backgrounds, it doesn't matter. When you get, actually I found the first year very easy. Really, it was just like we were dating and then we continued dating.
Love is in the air.
There was no drama per se. We're both similar. And we resolved things quite well. And one thing I will say that I did start to ask God for, which was a book. Is it that book by Stormy Merchant? It's very popular about a prayer something woman, like somebody who prays for her husband, right? I can't remember the name, but amazing book, because one of the things it said was, you need to don't look at your husband through your own eyes, look at your husband through God's eyes. So it was one of the things that I started to do very early. So if something he did upset me, I wouldn't just use that to kind of like color him, or, I would say, okay, I'll go back to God. I'm like, you gave me this husband. You explain to me what's going on here. Okay. So first year wasn't too bad, but once the kids came, I did not expect, honestly, how difficult that was going to be. And, my husband actually says it, that he's happy that we had that first year together, because then we got to know each other, love each other, and grow in understanding each other before the kids came. Because when the kids came, they were a real game changer. And both of us thought we were quite, like I said, we got married a bit older. So we thought we were equipped. We were not. You can never, like, simple basic things that we didn't think were going to be that difficult were very difficult. And even this is with all the support we had. So a lot of times I used to wonder, how do single mothers do this? Yeah. How do, I used to say, how do people do this without having support? It's so difficult, and it is. So I will say that's one of the, that's one of the things that was a surprise for me, to be honest.
I think I'll echo what Dolapo said, but that would not be my major shock, I think, to be honest. But yeah, I agree that, childbirth. Anyway, let's pack that. Somebody will say, why did I go 3 times? But let's pack it. Wow. Let's pack it. I think one of the, as I said to you, I was looking for, maybe because I had to grow up very young and did not have nurturing. When I say very young, of course, I was over 18. But between the age of 13 and about 25, where you need your mom and all of that, I didn't have that. And my mom was unwell for a few years anyway, and I was caring for my mom. So I never had care. I had to give care. Do you know what I mean? So, sometimes I'm a music minister, right? And I go out because I need to be fed back. I've given out so much when I'm ministering. I also need something back, right? So from a very young age, I wasn't getting any care. I was growing up. I was taking care of the house. I was taking care of my siblings. So I was looking for, when I met my husband, and it was, it was incredibly caring before we got married. It still is. That's not what I mean. That probably didn't come out right, but that's not what I mean. But what I'm saying is, he was so caring that I would never, if we go shopping, I'll carry 6, 7 bags. Like, no, D, you can't carry anything. Honestly, I was like, this is my world. This is my, But then the first day that he upset me and I responded back, so I went to him, I was like, Adeola, so you can't do this. Do you know what I mean? I was shocked with myself that I have found myself so comfortable that I could be responding in a certain way. So I think, and I keep on repeating the phrase of telling the younger ones the truth, is I had no idea what misunderstanding, resolving conflict in a marriage, what does that mean and how do you do that? So it was a shock for me, how he got angry at me once. I can't remember for life what it was. But then, so things were just hula bulala in my house. I'm angry, you're angry. So, So those were the first shocks for me, the realities of marriage in relation to dealing with conflicts, managing finances. And I'm very cultural. I say it anywhere and everywhere, even at work. I'm like, my husband is my head. There's nothing you can tell me. Till tomorrow, that is it. That's not changing. So when I do things then, I'll be like, he's your head. Why are you doing this? But my body responds faster than my mind thinks to look for a response. So those were the first shocks for me, that you can actually be so comfortable, so comfortable that you do certain things that you don't imagine that you could do. So those were the shocks for me. Childbirth and all that, fantastic, and of course, definitely a shock. But it was when we started to get older in marriage and get more relaxed and more comfortable, our real behavior and some behavior started to manifest, and I did not know how to handle that. So those were my shocks first.
Wow. Okay, could you guys touch more on the conflict management side of things and what your specific advice would be, how you sort of navigated that? So if that was something you initially struggled with, what was the process for you sort of finding a way to do that? Specific tips, for the couples that are on their way.
Well, I don't think there is one shoe. What do you say? One shoe size fits all.
One shoe fits all.
That's it. You get the point. I don't think there is a template, or there is information that says this is how you deal with conflict. That's it. I think for me, I made a determination in my mind. I said to myself, and I say it again, my marriage will work. That's it. So we need to, you see, before I got married and before the age of 30, I was singing, you know I sing, Dotto. But the question is, was I spiritual enough as a young girl, whether married or not? No, I wasn't. I had no knowledge, I had no platforms, or I had nowhere to go to listen to marriages, to learn what people have said, to just listen. And there was no truth out there, I'm sorry to say, with a lot of respect to the elder. There was no truth about what people were going through in marriages. People were saying and doing, I'm a husband, and you will be like, that's the kind of man that's the kind of marriage I want. But I had to learn how to do things myself. And what did I do? And I know people will say that's a normal answer. Yes, I turned to God. I did. I had to okay, something needs to work here, because even my responses doesn't make sense. He's my husband. But also, I had to learn to understand myself in those situations. And my husband is not a talking man. I can talk for the nation. I come back from work, and we're in bed, I'm like, at work.
That means, do you know what happened this morning, by the way?
Do you know what happened at work today? And he's in the bed, he's like, and I'm getting angry. I'm like, I'm talking to you now. So he doesn't understand communication. So what did I do? I had to learn and change my tactics and say, D, please, when I say this, just respond, even if it's 2 words. And then he will respond. So gradually, I'm lucky because my husband is able to learn. Not every man is hearing that something is wrong or something is not right. So what worked for me was, I know it's strange, but we spoke. I let him see my vulnerability. I let him see my worries. I called him out on his vulnerability. And then, of course, I listen. Thank God for women's program. Thank God for platform where you can listen. That's what I did. I just put myself, I didn't hide. There's no shame in asking questions. I come from a culture whereby you don't put your dirty linen outside.
Yeah.
You better ask.
But I asked, I communicated, I brought myself down because it wasn't working. And I made my husband see how I was feeling. And we're there together anyway. And he saw it. So now our arguments are different. I understand that, okay, he's louder. So I keep quiet. I choose my battles. And later, when we're having fun, when we're joking, I'm like, if you call him, I call him angry husband. And then he will smile because he knows what I'm talking about. I understand his triggers and I don't push his triggers. So that's what I'll say for now.
That's really good. Thanks. Thanks, Auntie. What about you, Auntie?
Yeah, no, she really echoed a lot of what I was thinking. And honestly, with the relationship, you start to learn about each other. So what she said about triggers, that's one of the things. At some point, actually, I even knew this before I got married, where escalating words, I actually started to think about it and identify escalating words, where I say something and then your response back to me has an escalation in it. Like, how dare you? And I'm like, no, actually, let's tone it down. No. Let's talk about what we're talking about. Let's not use words that are going to escalate this out of context. What are we really talking about? Are we upset because I didn't do something? I didn't meet a certain need? Those types of things. So with my husband, he's similar, not always super expressive, can kind of let things go. And one thing he told me from day one was, let me know. I'm not a mind reader. So another thing that we women do, and I don't know if all women still do that, is where we almost project and we are almost setting up our partners. Now, we went through marriage counseling, and anyone who's getting married needs to go to marriage counseling, especially there's some very good ones out there. And one of the things that said, some key things I picked up was, don't set each other up. If your birthday is coming and your husband may forget, and you know the husband, please don't wait till that day to say, oh, you forgot my birthday.
Yes.
My birthday is coming up.
This is what I want.
Don't set each other up. You are in this thing together. You're a team. You're not competing for who can hurt hurt the other person more. So I think when it comes to conflict, you have to put that in context. What is the real conflict about? Is it about raising this child? Is it about where we're going to live? Because sometimes things like that come up where I want to move to Dubai. No, I don't. I want to live here. And then you have to and this is where the Holy Spirit also comes in, where you have to pray and ask God, okay, you know what's right for us to do. I'm saying one thing. He's saying one thing. Please bring us together. Let's find that middle ground where we can then, agree. And there's some things, to be honest, as you know, you're never going to really resolve. Sure. Do you understand? It's going to be kind of the underbelly of the relationship. It's going to be there. And sometimes they'll come up again. You deal with it. There's some things that you can resolve quickly, but there's some things that you're going to carry on throughout the course of your relationship. It's almost like the thorn in your side, but you learn to kind of cope with it. Now, some people will be like, oh, no, that's not, you should try and resolve everything. No, sometimes it's not always the right time to resolve things. Some things need to be parked to come back when you're of better minds, you've matured a bit, then you can pick it up, right? That's what we found in our relationship that worked. So we'll resolve some things, and the things that need to be resolved. Anything that makes you feel uncomfortable and ill at ease in the relationship has to be resolved. So I remember there was something happened with my husband once where he had this friend that I wasn't very comfortable with, which as you get older in marriage, and I was sitting on it and I knew this is making me uncomfortable. I need to bring this up. And so I brought it up and he was so surprised. He was like, you should have told me this. I did. You have all these friends you're always talking to all the time. I never have any problem with it. Then I have this one friend. I'm like, yeah, because you don't have friends. So I'm not used to it. But I brought it up. We talked about it, and then I can feel okay about it, right? So I think it's important that you don't let things fester in your heart and you resolve them as they come up, but also be wise about the battle. You said it, choosing your battles. It's not every battle. Some of them, this doesn't really mean that much to me, take it. Some, this means a lot to me, then you sit on it. And there's some things you shouldn't allow to happen because if you allow it to continue to happen,
grow and have life.
It will grow and you can't do anything about it anymore because you allowed it. And some of those non-negotiables yourself. So
Can I just say something? Thank you, Dolapo. Conflict is going to happen. I don't want any young person, young adult, or anyone to go into marriage and think, I got it, I can manage conflict. It's not going to happen. You will go through conflicts. And then going through it and being unable to manage it will teach you how to better manage your marriage conflicts. But it's about having a mindset to want to learn how to deal with it better and how to be able to be in control in a marriage and as a couple, but not a mindset that, no, Dotsun's podcast said this, that, so I can deal it. No, you're setting yourself up to fail. So it is going to come. You would have the challenges, but is having all this and knowing that it is normal, it is real. Anybody who says my marriage, we never fought, please run away. Oh, please don't be friends with them. Honestly,
unless they're lying to themselves,
which is true, they could be, but you don't want to associate with that person because then you would want to build your home based on what that person is saying. Do you get what I'm saying? So that's. I just wanted to add that there.
Sorry, one last point, which is, if you find that both of you are not quite being able to resolve it, then there's always a third party that you can go, like somebody you both trust. Or if you need to get professional help, that's also something to think about. But sometimes you know that you've gotten to the end of your teeth and both of you, there's nothing you can do together. So then there's also that option. But it's just not just giving it up and saying, because that's how bitterness sets in, resentment, and those are the things that eventually will lead to divorce. But sometimes you see a couple and they look so promising at the beginning, and you now wonder 2 years later.
What happened? I have some friends, and this is what I was saying about unmet expectations. I've seen some of my friends get married to the love of their lives, the people that they were so eager to marry. And then 3-4 years later, they're like, please remind me, what was it I said I loved about this guy? And love is blind.
To me. Yeah.
Well, marriage opens your eyes.
For real.
Can you say that again to the camera? I love that.
Love is blind. Trust me, I was in love. Love is very blind. But marriage, it opens your eyes wide. Very wide. And I think that's just that.
Wow. That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I have another question for you that actually developed off the back of some of the things you mentioned. What would be your advice to couples on how to navigate evolving, I guess, personalities, character traits? Because being together for such a long time, you change. You develop likes and dislikes for things that, you had likes and dislikes for before, as in they change. So yeah, what would be your advice to
I love that
navigate
question, honestly, because honestly, it's not even a question that came to my mind until maybe about 2 or 3 years into marriage. And I said, it's funny how your personalities change, Because, and this is so important, because when you are choosing your husband before you got married, you had a set personality.
True.
And based on that personality, you were choosing that husband. But then, exactly. But then when you now get married, you actually evolve as a person. And that person you picked may actually now no longer be, then that's why it's important that God picks the person. Which I really discovered really, really well during the pandemic. Because remember, we were now really we were home together. So I knew, I said, thank you, God. And this is the person.
Wow.
Honestly, because there are many things I would never have predicted about my personality, or that God already had prepared for me, because I'd given this completely to God. And I'll tell you that story if we get a chance, about how I evolved from thinking and actually coming to understand what God had for me through a series of prayers, very specific prayers that God downloaded into my heart, honestly. And that I see all those prayers working out in my life now.
Wow.
Now, the point, I'll give a good example. Before I got married, house was messy. And my mom was always like, oh, why are you like this? Like your house should be this. And I'm like, I'm living alone. It was my own. And so when my husband met me, he knew, I was quite an honest person. So I said, look, there's some things about me you have to know. So, like when he's coming, I'll tidy up the house. I said, this is not how my house always looks like, or, Guess what? A few years into marriage, now I'm the one in the marriage who's like, why is this here? Why is this here? Me, my mom is in shock. She's like, how are you this person? What? So my husband is a tidy person. So if I'd pick somebody, this is a very simple example, who was like me, by now I'll be pulling out my hair, because now I need the house to be tidy all the time. I've evolved in that, and that's just one simple, you can now imagine on an emotional level where we're going to with this conversation. You really change as a person. And for me, the tidiness of the house was a big depiction of how one can transform from being this kind of messy person to almost OCD, like in marriage. And not because my husband made me, it's because I became that person. I evolved. So on an emotional level, on a even body level, different things happen to you that you evolve in marriage. And that is a real thing that people need to be thinking about. And that's why you cannot choose your husband. God has to choose the husband, and give you, and you by faith. Everything is by faith. Know that this is what God has chosen for me. So that's my own.
That's powerful. And I think for the young couples or young people out there who are looking at getting into marriage, I can't say anything more than, if your marriage or your partner or your husband, there is no God in it, then that's evolvingness. If there's a word like that, it's going to be a problem. That's the reality of what it is. Because as I told you, I was doing things that I never thought I would do. I was very clear that as a woman, you submit. This is who you are. If he says move, you move. If he says jump, you jump. You do everything your husband says. But no, I didn't do that. I didn't. And I had to say, Adeola, what's wrong with you? How did you get like this? And so many, there's the physical evolvingness. My husband met me, I was like a size what? Maybe 9 or 10, very skinny, very, very, very skinny. If there's a size 9, but I was skinny. Before I had my first son 21 years ago, I was a size 24. Now, if he didn't love me that much, hello, skinny, that's big, very, very big. Chiga, I'm saying, what would have happened? Yeah, so that's an example. And that's a physical thing. That's a physical attraction. Men are led by what they see. They're led by sight. That's a physical thing. But my husband was there. He was loving it, buying me Horlicks and say, oh, Lou, you're too slim. I was like, I'm not slim. He was buying me Horlicks and all of that. But then the emotional side of things, do you know what I mean? How you respond. A small thing like sleep and you snore as a woman. You don't wake up early. There's so many things. But I think you just need to have God in your marriage. And I think it's about building, you have a relationship with God. If you have a relationship with God, everything else is sorted. Because it will happen. But it will take control, he will take control of it for you, for your husband. When you have kids, things happen. If you find yourself with a man who loves you 24/7, the first day you have a child, he suddenly transfers all that love to the child. Both of you maybe are unwell and he doesn't look at you or care for you, cares for the child. Women, we need that love. We need that care. What's that going to do to you? But if you're secure, I always say I'm a very secure woman. Because I have God, I have my husband, and thank God I have whatever it is. I'm very secure. So there's so many things. For example, if I'm sitting here with my husband and his family, he doesn't see me. He sees his family. I know that, but I'm secure. And I know it's just for that moment. But if it was where I was coming from, where I wanted him all to myself, D, why did you do that? You didn't do this. You know what I mean? So, but I have God. God has told me my marriage will work and this man is mine. So no matter what happens to me, no matter what happens to him, I'm there and everything will take care of itself.
One quick point, that's amazing. You said, one thing that came to me as you were saying was, please try not to change the other person. It's not your job. Yeah. You know, I think ask the Holy Spirit to work in that person. That's the Holy Spirit's work. Your work is to change yourself. So I can't remember what it exactly was that my husband used to do that used to get me upset. And I said, God, help me to become blind to this thing so it doesn't affect me. Because sometimes, you know, there's some people, they're just going their way. They're not even noticing what's happening. And I heard somebody talk about that with marriage, that you have to learn to be blind to things. You can't see everything, because if you see everything, you will just be frustrated.
And women, emotion.
Some things are important to see, but some things are really not. And, you know, like snoring. If you're living with somebody who snores, what are you going to do? Are you going to move out of the room?
What if you're the person snoring?
Exactly. So all you can do is control yourself and your emotions and ask the Holy Spirit to work on you and to work on the other person. But I think primarily, if you're looking inwards to focus on yourself, then you're not doing that thing that people do where trying to change the other person, because that's a very frustrating thing to do. They will change on their own terms, but you can't force them to change. So I think that's quite important.
When they see you change.
Yes.
When they see you change, they will.
They will, yes.
Yeah. See, I want to ask a question off the back of that, because God has been a very central theme to sustaining marriage. How do people get to a point where they've let God choose their husband? Because there's so many examples of marriages that have started because they believed that God had led them into that marriage and the marriage didn't continue. So it's a difficult question, but what would you say to people to, I guess, ensure that this is a God-led marriage?